Hi everybody, it's Cash. Welcome back. Thank you very much for joining me. I am traveling in Switzerland right now and hadn't planned on making a video, but a couple of days ago these pictures came into my head that were so fascinating and so riveting that I thought I've got to tell you what they are. They came in response to somebody who'd written in and said, could you do that time travel-y thing that you do and go back to the building of the pyramids and see if extraterrestrials were involved? Now, if you've been watching me for long enough, you know that I don't really buy into the whole extraterrestrial answer to everything theory, but it was a fascinating idea. Now, I must say, first of all, that you should take everything I'm about to say with a grain of salt because I'm not entirely confident about what I'm about to tell you. However, it is pretty fascinating what I saw. Also, there is one other factor in that I've actually been to the Great Pyramid of Giza in Egypt. I've actually climbed up the outside of it, part of it. I have been up the inside of it all the way to the top. And so there is a chance that, plus I've seen movies about the mummy and all these other Egyptian things. So there is a chance that these pictures are infused with that. The Great Pyramid was built a very long time ago as a tomb for the Pharaoh Khufu, who I think the Greeks named Cheops eventually. But Khufu reigned for about 23 years, and as soon as he came into power, I guess they started building the pyramid because it took about 23 years to build. He died in 2655 BC. So the thing about Cheops is, I'm going to call him Cheops because I don't really know the word Khufu, but the thing about Cheops is that he died in mysterious circumstances. There's very little known about him. There are no portraits of him. There are no statues in existence of him. A little one maybe. There's some kind of little model thing. But other than that, there's nothing. And so nobody really knows what he looks like. Nobody knows how he died. But I thought I will just simply ask, show me how Cheops died. And when I went into that energy, somebody came up to him and stuck a knife in his side or did something to his side that immediately debilitated him. And he fell to the ground, clutching his side. So there is a very high chance that he was assassinated, maybe. But as he fell to the ground, either somebody else or the person who stabbed him grabbed him and dragged him along the ground. And the mere dragging of him caused dirt to get into his wounds. He was then deposited in a darker place. I suppose there's a possibility he was buried alive, but I don't think so. It was just like a holding pen or something where he could be left and attended to, but not medically. I think he died of his wounds, either of bloodshed or of blood poisoning or infection or something. But he was just dumped in this room. So that's all I got, really. But then I tried to do the time travel thing. Obviously, with this sort of distance in time, even though there is no time really, but with this sort of distance, it's harder to get any kind of fix. But I said, basically, take me to the year 2650, something like that. And it was fascinating. Immediately, there was sand, as you would expect. That's the bit that kind of worried me at first. It's like, well, of course, it's Egypt. I've been there. There's sand. But there was also a hillside covered in sand with a notch in it of some kind that had been dug out. And I, whoever I was sitting perched in that notch halfway up a hillside. And I did that for a while. It was an artificial notch. It was something that I think I'd made myself. But I did that for a while. And then I decided to climb down the rest of the hill. What was interesting about that was that I slid down on my backside and it was completely smooth, as if there were a stone there or a slab that I slid down. Now, obviously, it's tempting to go, well, that's the outside of a pyramid then. But they didn't build the pyramids that way. They had these machines they devised, these very, very primitive machines that would take individual stones and elevate them into a series of steps until they got to the top. And then they covered the stones with slabs of white limestone, which ultimately was stolen, and so they're not there anymore. You just got the steps, but that's how they were built. They wouldn't put the slabs up first, I thought, so it can't be that. But anyway, it was a sheer slippery slide, and I went all the way down to the bottom. Then I saw to the left of this slippery slide, I saw a gully that I could climb. And I climbed up this gully. And at the top there were people chatting, talking amongst each other. And to my right there were stones laid in patterns. Not many of them. Maybe 3, but laid in patterns. And the people were discussing the layout of the pattern stones. That's what I thought was happening. And there was some kind of awning over them for the shade. And what was interesting particularly about this part was that I've seen movies where there are slaves and there are Egyptian soldiers beating them and there's dramatic music and banging of drums and stuff, and there was none of that. It was very calm and very peaceful. It seemed like instead of soldiers standing by with sticks or whips or whatever, there were just team leaders. Maybe there were engineers and architects and people standing around looking at paper, parchment, whatever, or plans. But it was very calm. There was no excitement, none of the music you get in movies, of course, but it was just people standing around. And I watched them for a while, and then I noticed that there were other people some distance away over here. And they were peering into a hole in the ground. Again, calmly, peacefully. There was no excitement, nothing dramatic about it. So I went over and looked in the hole, and as I did, a face covered in, I thought it was chalk, but it actually turned out to be dust and stuff, popped up through the hole. And when I looked down the hole, there were people down at the bottom of it. It wasn't a hole, it was like the ceiling of something. And you could peer through the hole in the ceiling, and working down below were more people. I have no idea what this person whose head came up through the hole, what he was doing. But he climbed up a rope or something to this higher level and was reporting something to the people up above. I have no idea. Having watched that, I then walked over to the hillside on the other side of this. I mean, apparently the pyramid is built on a plateau, and that would explain this, why there was a hill to it. But I walked down that hillside, and at the bottom, curiously, there was the entrance to that cavern that the man had come up from through the hole. But it wasn't just an entrance, like a doorway. There was a big rock, and you had to go behind the rock, duck down, and then there was a hole, and you went in through there. So I did that, and when I did, there was this enormous cavern, the one I'd seen through the hole at the top. This enormous cavern, and people were working. They were clearing it out as much as anything. Some of them were clearing it, some of them were standing around again talking, and there was some kind of it's not a platform, but a series of plinths around the centre of it which had been installed to hold something. But the thing they were going to hold hadn't been built yet. That had yet to either arrive or be made, but they put in the supports for it. There was somebody climbing a rope at the back up to that hole that I'd seen. and just a lot of people standing around, either working, clearing things away, or discussing stuff. Lots of talk, lots and lots of quiet chatter. In fact, when I went over to where the little plinths were, I thought that I wasn't absolutely sure about this, but it was an odd idea that came into my head. I thought I saw what was the equivalent of one of those swatches you get in carpet shops. You know, where they have a series of rugs held by a grip and you just flick them back. Or wallpaper is another one, where you flick them back and you see a whole variety of them. It was something like that. Only there was, I don't know if it was actually paper or some material, some rough material maybe, but there were patterns on the material, and one of them was spherical, I would say. There was a spherical image on one of the pieces of whatever it was, parchment, material, or whatever. And that possibly could be what was going to be on the plinths in the middle, the structure, but I have no idea. I don't know what that was, I just saw it. And when I came out of that cave again and went back up onto the hill, I looked out and there were several teams of people all over the place doing something, working on something, planning something. But again, I can't stress this enough, the surprise to me of how quiet and laid back it all was. There were supervisors, that's all. People who knew what they were doing and were instructing others what needed to be done. That's all there was. There was no force, there was no action, there was no shouting or military presence or anything. These were the earliest stages of building whatever they were building, a pyramid or other structure, whatever it was. These were the earliest planning stages of it. And I don't know what the subterranean thing was at all. But they were obviously doing something underground, close to where the pyramid was. And finally, I went back and looked at that slab. You know the slab I slid down? I went back to look at that. And I think, and I really am guessing here, so please bear with me, but I think what it was like a sample to get the angle right. Possibly. Something like that. So it wasn't necessarily white limestone, which is what they ended up with, but there was one single slab like a cornerstone, or a sample to show the angle that the whole structure would be built at, so that they could plan those little things that were on the inside, whatever those walls represented, those little structures. So this was very, very early days. This was long before the Pharaoh died. It was just like, hey, we got to build a pyramid, or we got to build a structure. What are we thinking of doing? And now, if you want to go with the extraterrestrial idea, it's not unthinkable, given how expansive our investigations have been. It's not unthinkable that the plans for all of this were given to humans by beings from another planet, possibly, or from another star system, or whatever. It's not unthinkable, and I'm prepared to accept that. But there was definitely an implementation by humans here. There was definitely a series of engineers and architects and masons and others who were gathered around trying to figure out how to put this thing together and what it would involve. And maybe later on you had the stones and the soldiers and the whips and all the drama that's shown in movies when they come to actually build the thing. And they have to lug all the stones in. But in the pictures I got, it was simply... In fact, it was more of an academic exercise, really. It was more of a conference call but on the spot, as people gathered around and tried to figure out how to do what they were doing. And it was going on all over the place, underground, over there, and over there. There were just lots of little teams individually trying to figure things out, and then presumably they'd come together and report back to some team leader. But isn't that interesting? Of all the things that would come to me, why would it be something as banal, in a way, and boring as planning a construction site? That's what really got to me. It's like, that's all I'm seeing. No drama, no action, no nothing. But that's what came. And as I said, Cheops himself, or Khufu, his original name, seemed to have been assassinated. I would, as I said, take those pictures with a grain of salt, but it's interesting that those are the ones that came to me when I thought of the Pharaoh Khufu. Alrighty, so I thought I'd share that with you. I think it's really, really interesting. I'll see you soon, guys. Thanks very much for watching. Bye-bye.